Welcome to the In My Opinion Show with Ronald Robinson and friends. Seen on the internet 24 hours, 7 days a week. To view our extensive catalog, please go to YouTube, type in capital letters RBRIMO. I want to welcome our millions of viewers worldwide, and I especially want to welcome our very talented co-host, Ms. Denise Smith-Allen.
Hi, Ron. Hi, everybody.
Ms. Jackie Williams.
Hi, Ron. Hi, everyone.
And Mr. Henry Hatter.
Hi, Ron.
Let's talk about rape in prison. Denise, you are familiar with the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Maybe you could expand on that.
Well, Ron, thank you. That is a very touchy subject, a subject that, just evokes a lot of emotions. But before we begin to talk about that, I just wanted to read an excerpt from an article that came out of the Flint Journal on the 24th. And it's dealing with officials making room at women's prison. And it talks about the officials are making room, or taking steps, I should say, at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility near Ypsilanti to make more room for prisoners as the number of inmates have increased. Inmates are being housed in converted TV rooms and former offices at the state's only women's prison, but state corrections department officials say they don't have a serious overcrowding problem. Officials say the population at the prison has risen about 16% from 1,900 in 2011 to about 2,020 this October. In response, the department says 4 former TV rooms now housing 56 prisoners and 44 former offices now house 306 inmates. So from that article, it kind of put me in the mind of thinking about the different things that have happened within the prison system here in Michigan, and particularly with how it affects or impacts women. And I was really kind of concerned when I heard the number, how it has increased. And just wanted to have some discussion about it in terms of your thoughts on women's prisons in general, and working, having officers of the opposite sex working in those institutions. And I thought we would have some kind of discussion about that, and because that goes along with the PREA, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. So we wanted to talk about that because I think that we have to revisit that from time to time, because a lot of times when you have people who have been locked away, we kind of forget about them. But these are human beings that have had some involvement with the law. But once they're housed, what happens to them? And a lot of times we don't think about that. And so we just should have some discussion about that, particularly as it relates to women being confined. So that's why I wanted to bring that to us this day. I think
as a former retired lieutenant with the Michigan Department of Corrections, I worked at the women's facility on Bemis Road in Ypsilanti. Okay, when I worked there was half that number of incarcerated of females. Now, with 1,900, I think that's a disaster in the making. Because they have nothing, they have no place to go. All right, there were day rooms and and things of that nature. And when I worked there was 2 prisoners to a room, and now no telling how many are in those cells now. Okay, and there were 4 other female prisons at the time. Florence Crane Women's Facility in Coldwater, women's facility there in Ypsilanti. Okay, then they had Scott's facility on 5 Mile Road in Plymouth, and then there were some camps. Okay, so I don't know if the camps have been closed or not, but this is ridiculous. To me, the state is just trying to save some money. Okay. They've closed several facilities. Why, I don't know. With this 1,900, no, I can't.
No, the number now is 2,200.
2,200. That's ridiculous, in my opinion. Because they're setting these women up. All right. I mean, there's rape on women. Don't make no mistake about that. Okay. And then you mentioned about males in working in women's prison. Well, I worked there. You have to be careful because you're in a controlled environment. Okay. And a lot of these women, they don't have visitors for various reasons. Maybe they did something against their family that they've been ostracized. Okay, maybe they came from abusive relationships. Whether it be their husband or boyfriend. Okay, there's mental illness. There's mental issues. Okay, a lot of mental issues. You have drug addicts. Just recently, I was reading that a lady, a visitor, brought in controlled contraband, which was heroin, and she is dead. All right, you can't. I don't care what the Department of Corrections tells you. You can't control 2,100 people in the size of that complex. Okay, it's just impossible. I don't care what their people might say, but I'm sure they're going to justify it. But to me, it's inhumane.
Okay.
And as far as males working, in prisons, I mean that's another I have no problem with that because I valued my job more than anything else, and my family. But a lot of employees, male or female, they get caught up, all right, with the lies that prisoners will tell you, and a lot of times the prisoners, they will get you involved in something because they're only thinking about, well, maybe if I can expose an officer, whether it's fact or fiction, I might have a better opportunity of a lawsuit or getting out of that facility. So there's a lot of things that come into play here.
But it's interesting that you mentioned lawsuit, Ron, because in 2009 there was an actual outcome where 500 female prisoners received a substantial amount of money. I mean, and there was one prisoner in particular who had been raped at least 7 or 8 times over a course of her time being locked up. And so she was awarded a substantial amount, and then the rest, they put it in a pool, and then they divided it up against the other women. But
and I knew that prisoner.
Right.
All right.
So yes, and so the thing that I am bringing to the forefront in twofold is talking about the Prisoner Rape Elimination Act that was impacted or started in 2003, and that's a federal law. And a lot of the states, and I don't know, with Michigan, we were supposed to really be working on dealing with that issue. But how has that been working? It doesn't seem to have really had the impact that it should have, particularly in light of that lawsuit that came through. And so, as I read and start looking at all the data, I start saying, is it a good thing for men to be working in the women's prison? And so my position is changing because I do understand that there's two sides of this, because as we remember in the 70s, there was all, the move for affirmative action and for women to move into positions whereas they could work, in previously male-dominated fields. And certainly as a corrections officer, that would be one of those fields. However, in light of the mass usage or abuse of these women, it comes to bear when, the United Nations looks at the United States and says, you're probably one of the only few in the world that allow this, because other countries don't allow women to have men in their prisons working. So that's the question that is being raised here. In light of all these things that have happened, particularly in the prisons here in Michigan, what should we be doing? Should we continue to allow the men to work in there, or for the women, for that matter, to be working in the men's prison? So it's a broad question, but as we kind of narrow it down to the women's prison right now, the question still remains: what should we be doing about that?
Well, I wouldn't say mass abuse, but there is abuse. Okay, and I seen it firsthand. Or not actually seen it, but
you're aware.
During the investigations when I was working at a couple of these prisons, all right, it does occur. There's no getting around that, because you have, whether it's I really don't have a problem with men working in a female's prisons or vice versa, especially with if you try to do something else, you're going to get sued. Okay, with the laws as they are, today, and you would just hope that your staff would be intelligent enough to just do their job and leave it at that. Don't get caught up in the personal stuff and love triangles and sexual encounters and things like that. Because the vast majority of these women, they're going to come home. They're going to go home at some point. And Henry, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was hoping Jackie would have responded and let me into greater insight of this. I like what you said, Denise. I'm not as familiar with the circumstances as you are, because that's where you work and run. So you guys are subject matter experts. But I do believe that prisoners are exactly what they are. They're prisoners. They have little credibility. They can create encounters that can make an officer look bad. There may be women who, and you've already addressed this, who have sexual affinity for another woman, like men do. But, and it happens all the time. If you go into prison, you are going to be the concubine of somebody in prison, if you're a man. You're gonna, and I don't know what the incident rate is in a female prison, but I would think it would be about the same. So I believe we're a nation of laws, and the law is there to be carried out when it's broken. If a person violates the right of the other people, that person needs to be fired and pension stripped if it's found out. And unless we use the law that way, it will never work. And women have to recognize that they are criminals like men. And they're not to live in a hotel.
But they must be protected, though.
Yeah, we're talking about that. But we're a nation of laws, and we forget that. The only way that I see that would support such a movement to move men or to improve their condition is that they're not guilty of child abuse and not guilty of a homicide. I would release them to a more unrestrained conditions. But I don't know whether I would let them out depending on what they did. Just like men. There's some men who deserve to be in prison. They earned their way there. There's some women who deserve to be in prison because they earned their way there too. But I think that women should be protected because they are, particularly the women at childbearing years, and that's a grace that we ought to give them.
And then another thing with this too is that minorities, all right, are the vast majority are in prison, male and female. And I have a problem with that because of the laws and and et cetera, et cetera. But then you have to look at prisoners. They mirror our society. So when they go in, that doesn't mean that they might be in prison, but their lifestyles in a lot of ways have not changed.
Right.
Okay?
And speaking to the overcrowdedness, as Denise was stating, I've been watching the news and reading, and there is a lot of women. Normally when you see wanted posters, it's normally men.
Yes.
But now women are are wanted for running over males and killing people in the house and shooting and stabbing. They're the aggressor. And it's sad because I'm looking at it from a different perspective, because that is not where I work. So I'm seeing the other end of it. I'm seeing what they leave behind. And to know that they're making these decisions that are affecting so many people. Because when they go to prison, what happens to the house? Because we know that over 70% of households are ran by the woman. So when the woman is not home, where do the kids go? What about the children? So when they go to these prisons, I know they have several programs that try to accommodate them, an accessory for women or something. It's like children of prisoners.
Right.
And I know they have these programs, but I would like to get to the root of the problem of why women are. I think because some of them believe that they're not going to get the tough penalties because it was just a robbery, and I think they said the person that was doing the most was the woman. And I don't understand when we took on that role, because that was not the role that we need to take on. And so we need to kind of look at what is causing this to make the prisons increase, because it's causing other problems. It's kind of like the trickle down effect. And then also when you get to prison, yes, they should be safe. Should be safe, and they should not be at the liberties of the guards or anything else just because they're attractive or whatever they feel, and they should not have to do sexual favors to get the protection that they need.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can I
Yes.
just say that? Now, there's another compelling argument that I got to make here. The state does not have the money to house more prisoners. It does not have the room to put more prisoners.
Yeah.
So what it must do is release prisoners back into the public. And that create all kind of other factors. And there are kids who look at this and say, well, she only did 1 year or 6 months for it, so I can afford that. We don't want to
Advertise.
Yeah, we don't want to encourage our kids to follow that kind of behavior. Because what we need to do as we move closer to 2050, we need to get our kids ready to run the country.
And also, when people go to prison, for whatever sick reason, they have this badge of honor.
Right.
You know what I mean? And a lot of times they pick up bad habits, especially the boys with baggy ass pants.
Right.
You know what I mean? Oh, I can't stand that.
Okay, but
all
see,
right?
you're
Then also too, in my opinion, with the way folks are being incarcerated, I think it's genocide as well too. Okay, because you're taking the males away, now you're taking the females away.
right.
All right.
Right.
So what happens to the what happens to the reproductive cycle?
Well, yeah. Well, what happens is basically the family is really being destroyed from two aspects. If the father is incarcerated, or if the mother is incarcerated, or both of them are incarcerated, then the children are left to either be with extended family members, or they're going into the foster care system.
Sure.
Okay, so that's a whole nother discussion, and we should have that discussion.
And can I just say one other thing about funding? Anytime we take funding out of the general fund and put it over here for a new prison facility, we take it away from other services that people need. Welfare program, aid to children, schools, etc. And we really can't afford that.
And also too, the state of Michigan has a number of prisons mothballed. So why in the hell would they have 2,100 women in this facility? And
they have a budget. The prison has a budget. If it can't support another facility, and you have not only investment dollars involved in the facilities, but you got to have maintenance dollars, keeping it up, supplying it with officers and all the things that they get, which raises the cost of government.
So inhumanity continues.
Yeah, and we can't afford to take more money away from people who need it.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm not a bleeding heart, you know, for people that do things against the law. But my goodness, okay, what does society say when you go to when you go to jail or go to prison? You know, and then when you get out, you paid your debt to society, right?
And that's what they say, but in actuality, that's not what happens because it continues. And it's particularly has more impact on the female because once she gets out, you know, she already has the stigma of being having been locked up. This is
what we need to work on.
Okay, yes.
That's what we need to work on.
But then the other side of that too is even for housing, for assistance and all the rest of that, they're affected even more because of that.
You've identified a problem that we and people out there understand what you just said. It's a problem we need to work on.
Yes, I understand that, but what I'm saying right now, my concern is how are these women treated while they're in there?
Yeah.
Now, we understand they did some things to be in there.
We agree with you.
Yeah. And so, but you know, this inhumanity that goes on while they're in there, and even though there have been lawsuits with the Department of Corrections to address that, the things still continue. And even in the local jails, you know, I was reading about Macomb County Jail, and this was here recently within the last couple of months. A woman was, you know, showering and having, you know, voyeurism going on there, and then she's on her menstrual and the guy's telling her just don't bleed on the floor. You know, I mean, instead of getting her what she needed to take care of that. You know, it's those kinds of things, and that keeps coming up. That's the
caliber of the people that they hire in the prison.
Exactly.
Ron, I apologize.
No, look,
it has
just
nothing to do with you.
Right.
But you do have people that work for you now. So
oh well, I assisted in a number of investigations where the employee was was terminated, and 2 or 3 of them went to prison.
Once you take a person's retirement away from them, that's big and that's bad. And large consequences.
I think we fail. I mean, a lot of people that are working in the prisons, I think they fail to understand these people are still human.
Exactly.
They still have rights. They have a lot of rights. They have a lot of rights, and a lot of times they're in there reading and they're working on trying to figure out their rights. Everybody in prison is not just wasting time. You have some people that really are being rehabilitated, but you still have to treat them like human beings. And so I understand what Denise is saying. We need to make sure that the quality of life for them is correct. I mean, because you have to put yourself in that situation to understand. Like she said, they're in old classrooms and all that kind of stuff, which was not built to even house people. So you can imagine what the accommodations are.
But we have a budget. You can't do anything until...
But the budget is always, there is always room in the budget, because if it was the governor and he needed some money to go to some of his friends, they would go.
You would take it away from welfare and schools and stuff like that.
No, you could take it away from the businesses.
No, you can't do that.
Yes,
you got to take a look at the budget. Michigan's budget is $45 million. About half of that goes to schools, $19 million a year. And you got all of the other departments that require and demand money. So you got to be careful when you start extracting stuff from social services and from the kids' health laws.
Well, you're already extracting, because social services, my sister-in-law works there, they're extracting all kinds of services.
Right. With the budget, because it's broke up in different areas. Yeah. DHS is the highest in terms of the dollars that are spent.
Department of Public Health.
Yes, Department of Human Services. Okay, so your welfare, that's what you want to call it. Okay, the second highest is Department of Corrections. The second highest budget.
What's his amount?
Now, I can't give you the dollar figure.
Is it more than, say, $18 million?
Yes.
18 billion?
Not billion.
18 million.
18 billion.
Oh, no.
No billion.
Wait, hold it.
Not billion.
I said that the budget was, didn't I say 45 billion?
I'm
not sure.
Yeah, 45 billion. Mm-hmm. So if schools, I said between 15 and 18 billion dollars, if DHS is not above that, then schools supersede it.
No, I think you better look at that again, because DHS is the highest.
But can you tell me what range it is? Because I know what the school budget is.
I can't, but
if it's not over, I'm going to say $17 billion. It's not as large as a school district.
Okay, well, I'll bring those figures back to you next time we have this conversation.
We need to talk numbers sometimes too. So that we all know where money needs to go. It needs to fit the most needed first, and that's children, healthcare, and schools. And once you begin biting into that and boosting up other things, you're taking away from kids.
But we also have to protect the society too, okay? And
But this is not about protecting the society. The society is protected. Because you have to move people into old classrooms and stuff like that, they're still being cared for.
But
You
not
don't move them
properly.
into hotels.
But
stuff
not
like that. You don't
properly.
give them all TVs.
We're not saying we're getting ready to give them pay
and stuff
TV.
like that.
We say we were getting ready to put them in a correct facility, in an appropriate
Who's going to
room.
pay for it?
there is no way in heck that you can put 2,100 people in the area of maybe a 4-block area.
Well, that's what we're doing.
Okay, yeah, yes. And that's, you know, and you can just, either on US 23, you can drive by the prison and see it, or you can go on Bemis Road and see the prison. All right.
Already, Bill Schuette and some of the others are working on a plan to remove some of the people.
No, Bill Schuette ought to go someplace.
But there's a plan already, and I'm glad that you brought that there. But I'm very familiar.
That plan hasn't worked thus far. You got
No.
all kinds of people
Give
that
him,
are.
give him a chance. Give him a chance.
Well, hell, he's had what, 4 years, 5 years? How long? How much time does he have? How much time does he need? But anyway, listen.
Another term.
We've had a wonderful discussion on rape in women. Rape in prison on females. We will revisit this again. But this has been a wonderful, informative conversation. I want to thank Denise Smith-Allen, Jackie Williams, Henry Hatter, and especially you, our viewing audience. This is Ronald Barry Robinson and friends saying for the In My Opinion show, stay focused.